O Arjuna, gracious by me, by my own yoga power, to thee, this resplendent, infinite, primeval of mind, supreme, universal form has been shown, which by any other than thyself not had been seen before.
Okay, all right. So here's a unique thing. Arjuna is curious to know the cosmic vision. This is not granted to everybody, so it's quite a uniqueness, and we're all dependent on God's grace for that. So if you ask the theist, please tell me what is the goal of life, they might phrase it in this way: a vision of God, to see God. As a particular person I have in mind who keeps badgering, when will I see God, when will I see God? Not understanding, wherever you look, if you have a mind for it, you'll see God. You look in the sky, you see God as the blue sky. We start off by seeing the divine, here described as Atman, the self, or variously Purusha. You see the self in all, and then Sri Krishna tells that the self is see me, in other words. See the self, see me in all in me. See the self in all, say all in the self. Isha Upanishad says, see the self in all, and relates it to our level of evaluating happiness or grief or sorrow. You won't hate anybody by virtue of that. Why? Because when you see the same element in here as in there and everywhere, then a holistic kind of understanding comes about. When I do this to that person, I'm doing it to me. That realization dawns. There's not just simply an entity encapsulated within. There's not that kind of thing. We're not like a bird in a cage. When we say our goal is freedom, we're not saying we don't have it. We're saying we don't know we have it. Things we feel bound. There's a felt sense of being bound. But is it actually like that? A proper evaluation of things will say, no, I am free, I always was free. But how is it that I feel bound? So that's tied in with our sense of limitation about ourselves, and ourselves in relation to our environment, and how we operate in that, feeling we are embodied and individual, and all these things are parts. That has to gradually disappear. It gradually disappears, just as the night gradually disappears when dawn comes. So we have to take some provisional first steps, some crude first steps that everybody can accept. The steps will be different for different people. A good teacher will give the individual steps to individual people. So when we ask for a vision of God, in the beginning, our expectation is that God will be completely benign. We love God to be a benign thing. But when we look at nature and we equate it, first by seeing that self or divine is inside, and then is through, there's a pervasive element to it. Then we come to a conclusion, it must be as. It must be one without a second. What we call nature is not separate from it. They're one and the same thing. Just as an illusion is the same thing as the magician in a sense. When we talk of things in the language of an appearance, then we're not talking of anything separate. So supposing I look in the distance and see a tree stump and mistake it for a man with a hat. See? Well, a man with a hat must be there for me to mistake it for a man with a hat. You get the idea?
Yes, yes.
So when something appears, it appears as something. And that's why we come to a conclusion that Maya is neither existent nor non-existent. It's neither real nor unreal. It's simply a statement of fact. Vivekananda produces it very nicely. Say it's a statement of fact that things are not quite what we see that they seem, and yet our instinctual understanding of it is very different. We take this world to be absolutely permanent, absolutely real, and we live our lives according to that. If it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have the individual life strategy that we have. So when we talk about love, the primordial love we have is love for ourselves as we see it or understand it. That is a body-mind walking around, some entity with a distinct personality, relating to the world in a certain way, for our own advantage mainly. And love then becomes a bargaining process. I love you if you love me. If you don't love me, I won't love you. That kind of thing. But if I have a more penetrating vision and understand, not only is this nature deeply connected with me, but a proper analysis will tell me it must be the same thing. There cannot be anything separate. That means when I look at the blue sky, I see God in it, I see God through it, as it, and beyond it also. In, through, as, beyond is process. Now that means I can have a vision. I don't have to ask for a vision. I can see that being everywhere, just appearing in different names and forms. One form as the sky, one form as the sun, one form as the moon, one form as my family members, one form as my teacher, one form as my colleagues, one form as animals, insects, spiders, the things that we sometimes find an abhorrence of. We now say, oh, I see, glory is also in there. So we find the glory of God everywhere, if we have an eye to look for it. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, that's the same. Now here Arjuna is asking Sri Krishna, please give me a vision. Please let me know this cosmic version of yours. And his initial expectation is to see the glory that we see everywhere, and to have a heightened sense of that. So we read on and see what happens.
Okay. Neither by the study of the Veda and yajna, nor by gifts, nor by rituals, nor by severe austerities am I seen in this form in the human world by anyone other than thee, O great hero of the Kurus.
You can't do it without God's grace. It's only this one thing that is bestowed by God. That's all. Your own effort won't do it. It requires a huge matching movement. God's grace to say, I am here, I reveal myself to you. All right. Okay. In my cosmic form, yeah.
Be not afraid nor bewildered, having beheld this form of mine so terrific. With thy fears dispelled, and with gladdened heart, now see again this previous form of mine.
Yeah. So it's the end of the vision, because what number is this?
This is where's the number? 49.
Yeah. So and it's chapter 11.
Yes, chapter 11. 49,
So the whole cosmic vision has gone before, and the original expectation was a benign form. Everything goes well until it sees all kinds of things. Some of them are metaphorical, some of them mythical, references are made. But see, part of it glory and part of it is terrifying. It's a terrifying thing if we think that the Milky Way is headed for a collision with Andromeda. So when we look at the whole range of experiences, we're looking at birth, life, death, and we can evaluate it as not anything which which always goes smoothly. So a number of teleological questions are there about purpose and so on. And there's one thing that always comes up, and that is the problem of suffering in theology. So why does God make a suffering world? Why is it not, if he's a God of love and all benign, why is it that we find trouble here? Why is the world such a mixed place with a variety of sorrows as well as a few pleasures, things we delight in, and also things which are not pleasant to see. Warfare currently is not pleasant to see. We can put it at man's doorstep. But if God had the capacity to make a thoroughly benign world, why did he do it? Why did we have to have all this suffering that goes along with it? Is a question. Of course, we answer it by, it's not God's business. It's nothing to do with God. and we have the capacity to change it. But the fact is that, and we are the only ones that evaluate it in this way. An animal doesn't evaluate whether it's good or bad as far as we know. It doesn't say this is our moral code. An alligator doesn't say it's immoral to chomp off your leg and consume it. It's the alligator's nature, crocodile's nature. So this idea that nature, in fact in the Victorian era, in Darwin's era, Darwin always thought, along with his contemporaries, that nature was savage and had to be overcome. It was our enemy. Now we put it in a very different way. Vivekananda has a very nice passage at the end of his Raja Yoga. He talks about nature more in the language of, it is our guiding teacher and mother. It comes back and takes the forgetting soul onward. Having guided one person there, comes back and guides the next person. We find everything in our favor for growth. So it's an evaluation of nature which doesn't put it as our enemy. But if we look at it superficially, from a fearful point of view, a threatening point of view, we'll see that nature is both full of birth and life and death. We tend to ignore the death side of it. We like highlight the beautiful things. So the language here used is terrifying. See? You read that passage again.
Be not afraid nor bewildered, having beheld this form of mine so terrific. With thy fears dispelled and with gladdened heart, now see again this previous form of mine.
Yeah. Now, of course, the person relating this, so he says, I'll read the actual passage. Well, the first thing that we point out is that these various passages, here from 47 to 49 actually, in the 11th chapter, highlights that this is a tremendous privilege for Arjuna, rarely gotten. And so Blessed Lord points that out. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Maya Prasanena Dava Arjuna Tam. The Blessed Lord said, graciously have I shown you, O Arjuna. I'm reading my.
Yes.
This supreme form, by my, how? By my yoga power, because the whole of this nature comes about by this power of Maya. How are we so deluded? It has to be there, otherwise the human species stops. If we don't have at least two genetic directives, one which says we have to propagate the species, take it as a real thing and propagate, on the one hand. On the other hand, keep things going by eating, drinking, and so on and so forth, going along what's called Maslow's hierarchy of needs, seeking shelter, food, all of these kinds of things, then this world ceases to exist. And if this world is something like a drama or a play, then the play ceases. You put it in a humorous way. If you get your freedom, unfortunately the play ceases for you. So, yoga power is a very important phrase there. And it's put in this way, Atma Yogat, but it's full of splendor, Tejomayan, this universal, endless, it's endless, the primeval, all of these things are used. So it's resplendent, it's universal, it's infinite, it's primeval, which none but you has ever seen. You're completely unique to that. Then what's the purpose? The request was there, please may I see it. With an expectation, things will be, I will see God's glory, and understanding, oh, it's much more than that. The cosmos has these various aspects to it. God's nature is the cosmos itself. And so it goes on to say,
May I ask, when Arjuna was given that vision there and then, was that the same vision that any of us could expect to receive when we are graced with God's vision?
According to this is a unique thing, you see. Why would we want to see that? The urge is, may I see the truth, may I see God. May I see God in a sense of an entity which is blissful, an entity which is infinite, and at its very source, something we know is existent, something we know is consciousness, something we know is bliss, so on. The complete opposite to what we experience.
Okay.
We experience flavors of bliss, no doubt. So the commentary here is quite interesting. Spiritual exuberance and the experience thereof is the common inheritance of all, in answer to your question actually. Exclusiveness and favoritism have no place in it. Arjuna is beset with a worldly problem. The solution for it has to be found in the background of the cosmic functioning of the Lord. What it is his problem. His problem is he has a way of looking at things which gets him to understand, if I want to get away from this depression and this particular and peculiar scenario, then maybe I should not do anything about it. Maybe I should withdraw. It should be something like a hermit, run away from it. My options being to confront or run away or yield. These are my options. A further option is presented though. I was telling you, you have a further option which will solve your problem. So there's a cosmic functioning, and I am the one that is presenting myself as the cosmos itself. So along with it, a peep into the beyond, because in this time is a flexible thing. You can see the future as if it were happening in the present, and the past is already gone. So there's a kind of omniscience going on. So along with it, a peep into the beyond also is provided for him by the grace of the Almighty. Each person finds the reflection of their own face in the mirror. And in this same way, Arjuna finds problems peculiar to himself, solved in a cosmic setting. You put it in a different way. If we want to solve our so-called individual problems here, we have to shift our attention and our way of looking at things to a broader perspective. For example, it's well known that we say, when we look into the night sky, we say we look up. You look up and see the stars. You just as easily say down. You move away from the globe, there's no up, no down. So we tend to put everything in a geocentric way, and we tend to put everything in an egocentric way. If we want to get out of the egocentric problems and the geocentric problems, we have to get away from it and look at things from an entirely different perspective, a more cosmic understanding of things. So, his peculiar case is no doubt a solitary incident, and fittingly, of course, solved also in a unique way by the Lord. And then this other phrase that you just read out there, which starts off, Na Veda Nya Jayane Na Tanhe, starts off again. Neither by the study of the Vedas, nor by sacrifices deemed, I do this ritualistic action, I should get a result somewhere, nor by charity, giving gifts, nor by rituals of any kind, nor again where we expect some kind of result, nor by tapasya, severe penances. You can do nothing of this type will reveal this form of mind, says the Lord. And then, so it's a unique thing here to this hero, and in this particular translation it gives a useful extract from the Gospel of Ramakrishna. It says, so Ramakrishna is saying like this: one man gets intoxicated with one peg of liquor, while another needs an overdose of it before he becomes tipsy. But when intoxicated, both are in the same state. And in this way, some get into bliss with a ray of realization, while the others do so after coming into the blaze of divine presence. However, the effect is the same in both cases. You get the idea, beautifully put. Now, it's easy, of course, to be afraid and bewildered by this terrifying experience, and to understand that you have to go back and read the entire chapter and see these experiences, understanding some of the references will be symbolic. Some efforts for being mythological and so on, but it gives the same understanding. So don't be afraid, don't be bewildered, because this is unfamiliar territory. Unseen is terrific, terrifying form of mind. And be free from fear, delighted at heart, when you see things in the correct perspective. And when you now see me back in the familiar form that I present to you, part of which for a long period of time you have misunderstood, because you didn't know that this was within me. So you talked to me in a casual way, joked with me, and so on. Now I understand your depth and your vastness. How can I have done that? So we find that Sanjay, who's relating this whole thing, of course, is saying, having spoken thus to Arjuna, Vasudeva, that is Krishna, showed again his own form, familiar form, and the great soul one, assuming his gentle form, consoled him who was terrified. And then Arjuna says, having seen this, your gentle human form, I am now composed and am restored to my own nature, because in a way I regret asking this. I didn't know what to expect. Now I have seen this. I have seen all these people on the opposing side flying in to your mouths and being consumed by me, by the Lord of the universe. You see, all this carnage taking place, inevitably, because in the future that's what is destined. Because from God's point of view, there's no past, no present, no future, different time frame. And so the Blessed Lord said, very hard it is indeed to see this form of mine, which you have seen. And even all the supreme principles of the universe, the Devas, are very eager to see this form. But by unswerving devotion can I of this form be known and seen in reality, and also entered into, O scorcher of foes. Not only seen, but entered into. And what is the way? Love of God, devotion to the extent that God's grace makes a corresponding movement. Ramakrishna gives a nice little saying here. He says, many have heard of milk. Those who have seen it are lesser in number. The partakers of milk are lesser still. Even such is the contact of man with God. And a talk arose whether man can see God with his physical eyes. No, he cannot be perceived with fleshy eyes, not even eyes that have been exercised. But when bhakti or devotion is practiced, then the spiritual aspirant, the sadhaka, develops a superior sense organ which has the power to see and hear mundane, super mundane things. With that spiritual eye, God is beheld and the devotee is commingled with him. What does devotion, love of God have? It has an opening effect, progressively, so that we see a little bit more. We don't see the whole thing necessarily. If we see the whole thing, we might get a fright. But progressively we see it, but more and more, the eyes open more and more internally. And when we do that, we see progressively supramundane things. And we might hear also supramundane things and so on. So it's this inner spiritual eye that God is beheld. And then, of course, the devotee becomes commingled in him. The dividing lines become blurred. Me, he. We start off with the devotion. I am here, God is there. Because God is there, I can now be a lover, and God can be the beloved. You can have a relationship like that. But as that becomes more and more, then there's an opening of understanding, and these divided lines become a little bit more blurred. Until ultimately, I am he. Nearness becomes oneness, essentially. That's the idea.
And may I ask then, so your relationship that you had, the dualistic relationship, changes then completely?
It changes because it elevates into a delight in the sweetness of God. The sweetness of love is there.
Okay.
It's similar, very similar in many ways, because there's a symptom of it in human love. There's an echo of it in human love.
Okay.
So in human love, you meet somebody, the initial attraction is there. God is Hari, the one that is what you are attracted to. But as we become to know that person, the relationship deepens. Instead of thinking about that person once a day, you might think that person never texted me. So after 10 minutes, you're anxious, you never text me, that kind of thing. See? So eating, drinking, sleeping like that, two lovers becoming entangled like that, until you are my life. You see the language of romance. Yes. You are my life. You are my heart. I can't live without you. Same thing in this. I can't live without you. And then the sweetness of love flows. The bliss of love flows. There's an ocean of bliss. At some point, however, that bliss inevitably yields to a sense of oneness.
Okay.
So nearness becomes oneness. That sense is there. And for that reason, we say, the devotees get the knowledge also, get the highest realization as well. And the one who doesn't have that, the jnani, he gets love, finds love for that same unit, that same entity, that one without a second, finds it everywhere. Engages automatically in a spirit of compassionate service. Welfare of all beings.
Okay.
So he who does work for me, who looks on me as the Supreme, who is devoted to me, who is free from attachment, one who is without hatred for any being, he comes to me, O Pandava. So Sri Ramakrishna, according to this, says this, do you know what kind of devotion we ought to have towards our Maker? The love of a chaste wife to her husband, the attachment of a miser to his hoarded wealth, the craving of the worldling for sense pleasure, all these rolled into one and directed toward the Lord makes a devotee. We shall truly gain him in this way. They all the human love, because we use the same word love for human relationships and for objects. See? Verses say, I love the money in my bank account and I love my wife. See? Two separate things. One's a human, one's an object. Now if you combine the feeling of that, and then so the miser for the wealth, and the craving, the endless craving and desire that somebody attracted to the world feels for the various sense pleasures that are there. Having an urge toward happiness and bliss, people think they find it in the pleasure, no doubt the real pleasure which the senses provide, or the relationship of the senses with their object supply. But of course everybody knows it doesn't last very long, and if you make it habitual, it becomes not only a repetition of the same thing, but an entrenchment of it, a deepening of it. When you form every action, every thought that happens has its corresponding memory, its corresponding echo. A record is made, put in not just put in the archives and left. It's left bubbling on the surface, and it's easily activated again. So we have to take all that love and direct it in a different way. The love of God, God being the one most worthy of love. The English word God seems to come from the Germanic hutum, G-U-T, hutum, which comes from Sanskrit hutam, the one worthy of offering to. Okay. Yeah, expanded and say the one worthy of loving. So if you think that the sun is beautiful, he who lights the sun is more beautiful. Tameva bantam anubhati sarvam. The passage like that, it says he's shining, everything shines. See? So the light, the self-effulgent light behind all things which are lit. But did we catch it? Or did we take it for granted? Most people take for granted the sun will rise tomorrow. No one doubts it. You might not see it because it's cloudy and all that, but there's no doubt that the light comes through. When the morning time comes, you wake up, the birds know it, every creature knows it. But how much appreciation goes into it?